When you step onto a US Navy submarine for the first time, the surface world disappears like someone shut a door behind you. The air turns colder. The steel walls close in. The hum of pumps and engines never stops. A new submariner has no warm-up period. Within minutes, you're squeezing through passageways so tight your shoulders scrape metal, meeting the crew you'll eat, sleep, and bump into for months. Your rack feels smaller than a coffin. Fatigue creeps in fast. The first 48 hours hit hard and set the tone for everything that follows. Boarding a submarine. When a submariner first steps onto a US Navy submarine, the moment is quiet but loaded with tension. After opening a steel hatch and climbing down a ladder, everything you know is left outside. First, the crew boards the sub through a small hatch, usually located on the sail or weapons deck, and climbs down a vertical ladder into narrow corridors lit by dim, functional lights. Inside, there's no natural light or windows, and the space feels instantly tight. Once inside, the boat is alive with activity. Sailors carry gear and supplies like bags of clothes, tools, food stores, rations, oxygen and air system gear, medical kits, personal hygiene items, and any required protective clothing. Everything must be carefully stowed because storage is extremely limited. Bunks are narrow and cramped, and many crew members sleep in shifts when the boat is crowded. There's a mix of new faces and seasoned submariners on the ship. For the newcomers, they are often called non-quals or NUBs, which means non-useful bodies. The first few hours are all about learning where the racks are, which ladders lead to engineering, the mess and control rooms, where the escape trunks and life support systems are, and how the narrow passages connect. At the same time, the submarine must be ready to operate. The systems must be checked, emergency gear placed, and basic protocols established. Supplies like food, water, spare parts, maintenance tools, oxygen systems, and even extra gear for emergencies are already aboard or are being loaded to prepare for the long weeks or months ahead underwater. As the sub settles, new crew members often receive a qualification card and begin their on-the-job classroom. They go through drills for damage control, training on ventilation and air-breathing systems, familiarization with every compartment, and an introduction to the strict routines that keep the submarine alive below the waves. But as you can expect, it's quite overwhelming for anyone who is boarding the submarine for the first time. Once you step in, here's what you notice right away. What you notice right away. One of the first things that hits non-quals is how small everything feels in a submarine. The corridors are narrow and the ceilings are low, so you duck more than you walk. There are so many pipes, valves, machinery, consoles, racks, and bulkheads, so it always feels like there's no room to stand upright. The living quarters are tight. Inside, there are no windows, portholes, or natural light, just the steady glow of artificial lighting. Once the submarine submerges, you lose any reference to outside rhythms. There's no sunrise, weather, or horizon, and nothing to mark day and night. Instead, they track time through shifts, meal times, and duty rosters. You also become immediately aware of the smell, which is a peculiar recycled air odor. On many submarines, that smell comes from the chemicals used in the air scrubbers to purify the air. The smell mixes with the scent of equipment, diesel or reactor air handling systems, body odors, cooking smells, metal, and machinery. And before long, it clings to clothes, hair, and personal belongings. At the same time, there's a constant hum and vibration that's created by the pumps, ventilation, engines, generators, occasional groans or clicks of the hull, steel shifting, or water pressure changes. It never really goes away. For a first-time submariner, those first hours can be overwhelming. The cramped quarters make you keenly aware of how little personal space you have. With no light and the constant artificial environment, you are detached from any sense of normal time. Many new submariners have reported feeling disoriented, claustrophobic, or annoyed by the hum of machinery, as well as having a tightened chest. But for many submariners, you don't keep notice of this forever. After a day or two, the smells begin to fade from consciousness, and you go nose blind. Aside from the assault on your senses, the first 48 hours for a submariner present a major lifestyle shock. Immediate lifestyle shock. When a submariner steps aboard, the reality of submarine life hits hard and fast. The first thing a new submariner learns is that there is no such thing as personal space. On many submarines, there are simply more sailors than bunks. The sleeping quarters, which they call berthing areas, are tiny, often no more than about 15 square feet per sailor for sleep and whatever gear they bring aboard. Bunks are stacked 3 high, and for junior or extra crew, the sleeping arrangement may not even be a guaranteed personal bunk. Instead, they are assigned to hot racking. That means you climb into a bunk that was just vacated by someone else, sharing narrow locker under the mattress storage for clothes and personal items. In such a constrained place, your rack becomes your entire personal domain, and even that is shared. The lack of space isn't only when you're sleeping. Storage lockers are small if present at all, because almost every inch of the submarine is allocated to vital systems. There is little left over for personal kit, spare gear, or comfort items. Meanwhile, the schedule aboard a submarine is relentless and unnatural compared with life on land. Most U.S. Navy submarines use rotating watch schedules that split the crew into shifts, frequently using 6-hour watch periods followed by limited rest, maintenance, and other duties. As a newbie, you might think off-watch means sleep, but often that time is taken up by maintenance, cleaning, drills, study, or meal prep. There simply isn't enough quiet, uninterrupted time for rest. Under these conditions, sleep becomes a precious, scarce resource. Food is another lifestyle shock you have to face. When a submarine is deployed, it loads up all it can. Fresh food rarely lasts more than a couple of days or weeks, depending on the length of the mission or patrol, and after that the crew relies on canned, dried, or frozen rations for weeks or months. That means no fresh vegetables, no fruit, and long-lasting meals. The galley tries to make the best of it, but often the diet becomes monotonous. Over time, the mess deck, which is the cramped space where meals occur, becomes one of the few communal places aboard. But that means rotating meals around watch schedules and eating when you can, rather than when you're hungry. All these realities amplify the lifestyle shock for a new submariner. The submarine demands adaptation, patience, and mental flexibility, and for many newcomers, they have to quickly get used to the discomfort and make a tiny, shifting space feel like home. Although they have a lot to get used to, newbies have a role of mostly learning for their first 48 hours and even the first mission. The role of a newbie. When a brand new submariner reports aboard a submarine, the first days are all about learning, observing, and gradually becoming useful. From the moment they climb on board, they enter an intense period of adaptation, mentally, physically, and socially. A new submariner's first real task is to begin mastering the inner workings of the boat. Before you can truly belong, you must understand how everything inside operates, including the ventilation, hydraulics, electrical systems, life support, escape equipment, watertight doors, and potentially even weapons or emergency response gear. This process of learning is formal. New sailors go through initial training ashore, where they get the basics of submarine theory and safety. Once assigned to a submarine, the real education begins. Over many months, they study internal layouts, routines, and emergency procedures. They need to understand what goes where, how to operate what, and how to respond under pressure. As they often say, they earn the right to get their dolphins, which is when they wear the submarine warfare insignia. In the meantime, even as a non-qual, a submariner still plays a real role in the day-to-day operations of the boat. They stand watches, help with maintenance, assist senior sailors, and perform general upkeep. These tasks seem mundane, but they are still important. Cleaning, checking equipment, helping with routine maintenance, and supporting watch shifts all ensure that the submarine stays operational and safe. The boat relies on every pair of hands. Aside from the technical and physical demands, there's a strong social transition as well. Submarine life has a distinct culture, with a tight-knit hierarchy where rank matters, but respect and mutual trust matter more. As a newbie, you spend a lot of time shadowing experienced sailors, listening to how they speak, how they move, and how they respond under pressure. You observe the unspoken rules, like how to move in tight corridors, behave in shared spaces, respond in emergencies, treat senior crew, and coordinate in confined quarters. Over time, the new submariner learns the systems and procedures and how to fit into this underwater community. Ultimately, the early period as a new submariner is a test of trust. The crew won't immediately treat you as fully capable, but you must earn that trust. By showing discipline, paying attention, being ready for duties, and learning quickly, you begin to prove yourself, and eventually you can earn your dolphins. But even with all the readiness, the first 48 hours can place psychological and emotional pressure on a non-qual. Psychological and emotional impact. When a non-qual first dives into submarine life, the psychological and emotional impact can be powerful and immediate, reshaping how you think, feel, and even sense time. The moment the hatch closes brings a deep sense of detachment from the outside world, like no sun, fresh air, or natural rhythms. Without daylight or natural cues, the body's internal clock starts to get confused. Submariners often live on rotating watch schedules and dim, artificial lighting. Over time, this can disrupt normal sleep-wake patterns, lead to chronic fatigue, and create a kind of ongoing operational jet lag. In the first days, especially the first 48 hours, everything can feel disorienting. The constant humming of machinery, the mechanical breathing of ventilation systems, and the dim, unchanging light with confined corridors contribute to a strange sense of unreality. For some, even small tasks like keeping track of time become difficult because there's no sunrise or sunset to mark the passing of time. Night and day blur, and the usual cues that guide sleep and activity are gone. At first, that feels uncomfortable, and some have given up because of claustrophobia and fear. Humans are used to cycles as they stay awake by day but rest by night. But when there's no cycle, the initial shock can heighten stress, anxiety, and the feeling of being unmoored. But humans eventually adapt. After a period, sometimes as short as a few days, many submariners begin to mentally adjust. They get used to the environment, from the smells to the tight spaces and corridors. Nothing feels alien anymore, and they eventually feel numb to what was strange before. Living in tight quarters, depending on the same systems and sharing the same schedule, can cause some emotions to come up in the new submariners, which is the feeling of camaraderie. That creates a unique bond among the crew. For a new submariner, the bond can become a source of comfort and stability. Pause. You rely on others for your safety, your sleep rhythm, your meals, and even your state of mind. With shared challenges comes shared support, mutual understanding, and an often intense sense of belonging. On a submarine, you become a part of a team, but as a newbie, you have to navigate the structure of the entire submarine. Navigating the structure of a submarine. When you first board a submarine, you're stepping into a carefully constructed inner world. This is one defined by tight engineering, layered levels, strict procedures, and clear purpose. Entry involves descending from the sail or sail hatch down into the pressure hull. The passage can feel abrupt, especially if the conditions are cold or harsh. Inside, the submarine divides roughly into 3 main zones. At the top lies the control or radio area, which is the brain of the boat, where navigation, diving controls, ballast, steering, weapons control, communications, and monitoring systems are located. Midship is where the crew lives. The mess hall, galley, bunks, and shared functions like the life support and daily essentials are located here. And there's the engineering and weapons space in the rear, which holds propulsion, power generation, and auxiliary systems, all the machinery that runs the boat. Because of this structure and the submarine's sensitive mission, access is tightly controlled. Critical compartments are off limits to most, including casual visitors, to protect operational security and crew safety. Radiation exposure to normal personnel inside safe zones is minimal under routine conditions. This isolation underscores how compartmentalization supports safety, security, and control. In certain submarines, for those that operate beneath Arctic ice, the layout and operational protocols must account for environmental challenges. They face problems like the changes in water salinity, pressure, and sonar behavior, which require extra vigilance, deep knowledge of ballast and trim control, and specialized procedures to function safely under shifting conditions. Over this structure, a clearly defined chain of command regulates everything. The captain sets mission objectives, the executive officer runs day-to-day operations, and the chief of the boat bridges the officers and enlisted crew, oversees morale and discipline, and ensures the boat runs smoothly from within. After 48 hours, the newbies on the submarine are expected to have adapted to the structure and discipline on the ship. They begin to feel like they are accustomed to life underwater, and eventually advance to bigger tasks. What some newbies feel after 48 hours. When a new submariner pushes through the hatch into a submarine and spends their first 48 hours submerged, the emotional and psychological impact can be intense. The first time climbing into confined spaces, adjusting to tight quarters, smells, mechanical hum, and strange lighting or schedule. Everything is unfamiliar. They might also feel fatigue and uncertainty as their sleep cycles are off with constant background noise, shift changes, and seasickness or motion discomfort. The submariner feels awkward and out of place, especially with senior crew, but as part of a tight-knit team. Learning the layout, systems, safety procedures, shift timings and routine, and even receiving instructions non-stop from senior crew can be overwhelming. Even with that, they begin to feel a sense of purpose and intensity. Even if they are assigned junior tasks, they start to feel the responsibility. You're part of a living, breathing, extremely complex team and machine underwater. The first 48 hours for a new submariner on a U.S. Navy submarine can be overwhelming, with multiple tasks, strange smells and sounds, detachment from the outside world, and a feeling of claustrophobia. Do you have what it takes to stay in a submarine for the first 48 hours? Let's know your thoughts in the comments. For more insights into life in the Navy, subscribe and hit the bell. We'll see you in the next video.